Welcome back to the Case Files. I'm your host, Cody, and today we travel to one of America's most unique and mysterious landscapes, the shores of the Great Salt Lake in Utah. This is a place steeped in strange history, a mineral desert that holds secrets beneath its vast, shimmering surface. The case we are exploring is one of tragedy, anonymity, and a haunting local legend. It's the story of a young woman who was lost to the system for years, identified only as a set of remains found near an abandoned landmark. For 12 years, she was just a ghost, an unknown victim, given the chilling local nickname, Saltair Sally. But she wasn't Sally. She was Nikole Kistina Bakoles, Niki, a creative, spirited young woman, barely 19 years old, whose life was violently cut short. Her journey is a grim reminder of how easily those on the margins can slip through the cracks, and how difficult it is to find the truth when a killer leaves only the silence of the desert behind. This is the case of Nikole Niki Kistina Bakoles. As always, my name is Cody. I run this channel with my partner, Katie. Welcome back to the Case Files, Minds of Madness. A reminder, if you do find today's video interesting and informative, be sure to like and subscribe for more stories told by yours truly. Now grab a snack and a blanket and let's dive in. Nikole Kistina Bakoles was born on August 23, 1980, in Washington State. She was, by all accounts, a creative soul, a lover of poetry, a painter, and a person who carried an inherently free-spirited nature. Like many young people seeking a new direction at the turn of the millennium, Niki was searching for stability, but life presented constant obstacles. By 1998, Niki was just 18 and had already experienced profound life changes. She was a mother, but tragically, due to personal circumstances that included her struggles with drug use, she lost custody of her young daughter. This loss, as you can imagine, was a major defining sorrow in her short life, often compounding her instability. Looking for a fresh start, Niki moved from Washington to Utah in 1998 with her boyfriend at the time, Joel Shawdoin. Utah represented a chance to escape her past and build a new, if unconventional, future. Life in Salt Lake City in 1999 and early 2000 was difficult for the pair. They moved frequently, residing in various temporary accommodations. The pressure of instability, combined with Niki's ongoing legal challenges, reports of shoplifting, and other minor infractions, kept her moving and often prevented her from forming solid, long-term connections. She was, essentially, living on the margins of society, which is a key factor in why her eventual disappearance would go unnoticed for so long. The last known address they shared was in the Salt Lake City area. By March of 2000, tensions were running high. Niki and Joel were reportedly facing eviction, adding another layer of stress to their already precarious situation. The relationship itself was volatile. The details of that period are sparse, gathered primarily through police interviews years later. We know that on one day in March 2000, the two had a significant argument. What precisely triggered it, we don't know. But according to Joel Chowdone's later account, he left their shared living space following the altercation. He claims that when he departed, Niki was still there. He never saw her again. When asked by investigators, Chowdone stated he simply believed Niki had done what she often did, moved on. Given her transient lifestyle and her history of suddenly relocating for a fresh start, this explanation was not initially questioned with the scrutiny it deserved. For her family back in Washington, contact had already become intermittent. Niki often went weeks or even months without calling, a pattern they had unfortunately grown accustomed to. They knew she was trying to find herself, and they believed, heartbreakingly, that she simply needed space. They hoped she was safe, living somewhere new, painting and writing poetry. This is the terrible reality of the missing who live on the edges of society. The system fails to notice them, and even those who love them are conditioned to accept their silence. March 2000 came and went. Then April, then the summer. No calls, no letters, no sign of Niki. For her family, the silence started to feel different. A year passed, then two. Even for Niki, this stretch of complete silence was uncharacteristic. The faint hope that she was safe and finding herself began to be replaced by a terrifying dread. It wasn't until 2003, 3 years after she was last seen, that Niki's family made the difficult decision to file an official missing person report. Imagine the weight of that decision, admitting that your loved one might not just be away, but truly lost. By the time the report was filed, the trail was icy cold. The places she had lived were occupied by new tenants. Her casual acquaintances had moved on. And the memory of the young woman who had lived life on the streets of Salt Lake City was already fading into the background noise of a busy metropolis. The police had very little to go on: a vague timeline, a last known associate, Joel Chodoin, and a history of instability. With no witnesses, no crime scene, and no physical evidence, the case quickly stalled. Nikole Bakoles joined the sad, swelling ranks of America's long-term missing, her fate unknown. But the truth, as it so often does in these cases, was already waiting to be found. And it was waiting in a place steeped in its own dark and peculiar history. Let's talk about the location that would forever become tied to her memory: the Great Saltair. The Saltair is not just a venue, it's a piece of Utah mythology. First opened in 1893, it was originally dubbed the Coney Island of the West, a magnificent Moorish-style resort and dance hall built right on the shore of the Great Salt Lake. It was a place of fantasy, drawing massive crowds for decades. But the Saltair has been plagued by bad luck. It has burned down, been rebuilt, and suffered continuous damage from rising and falling lake levels. Its history is one of resurrection and ruin, giving the whole area a distinctly lonely, abandoned, and somewhat cursed atmosphere. The surrounding area is vast, open, and desolate, a perfect place for secrets to be kept. It was in the desolate, salt-crusted fields near this legendary troubled structure that a terrible discovery was made, years before Niki's family officially reported her missing. On October 8, 2000, a mere 7 months after Niki was last seen, a discovery was made that would haunt the Salt Lake community for over a decade. In a field not far from the Saltair venue, a set of human skeletal remains was found. The location was remote enough that the remains were likely missed by searchers or casually passing individuals for months. The remains were extensively skeletonized, indicating they had been exposed to the elements for a significant period, likely since the spring or early summer of that year. The investigators who processed the scene recovered crucial pieces of evidence that would eventually, though belatedly, lead to an identification. Alongside the bones, they found specific personal effects. First, there was a distinctive shirt. Second, a blue choker necklace was found near the remains. And third, perhaps the most striking visual evidence, was a significant amount of waist-length blonde hair. Investigators were able to determine a few key facts almost immediately. The victim was female, young, and the manner of the discovery, the remote location, and the apparent concealment indicated foul play. This was not a natural death. This was a homicide. However, the forensic tools available at the time, combined with the lack of a corresponding missing persons report, left the case at a painful standstill. The remains were completely unidentified. Without a name, without a known history, and without a viable lead, the case went cold almost instantly. The young woman became an unknown in the annals of Utah crime. And that's when the moniker began to take hold. Because she was found near the Great Saltair, the local media and community began calling her Saltair Sally. It's a tragic footnote, a nickname given out of necessity that ironically stripped the victim of her real identity, turning her into a piece of local curiosity rather than a person with a story. For 12 long years, Saltair Sally's identity was the key that remained missing. Her case file was stored, her bones kept as evidence, awaiting a scientific breakthrough or a crucial tip that would finally give her back her name. Investigators were able to determine a few key facts almost immediately. The victim was female, young, and the manner of the discovery, the remote location, and the apparent concealment indicated foul play. This was not a natural death. This was a homicide. However, the forensic tools available at the time, combined with the lack of a corresponding missing persons report, left the case at a painful standstill. The remains were completely unidentified. Without a name, without a known history, and without a viable lead, the case went cold almost instantly. The young woman became an unknown in the annals of Utah crime. And that's when the moniker began to take hold. Because she was found near the Great Saltair, the local media and community began calling her Saltair Sally. It's a tragic footnote, a nickname given out of necessity that ironically stripped the victim of her real identity, turning her into a piece of local curiosity rather than a person with a story. For 12 long years, Saltair Sally's identity was the key that remained missing. Her case file was stored, her bones kept as evidence, awaiting a scientific breakthrough or a crucial tip that would finally give her back her name. For over a decade, the remains of Saltair Sally lay unidentified. It was a cold case in the truest sense of the word, awaiting that single piece of information to unlock the mystery. That key came not from a confession or a witness, but from the quiet, meticulous world of forensic science. In 2012, investigators decided to revisit the case with new technology. One of the most critical pieces of evidence, preserved for 12 years, was the victim's long blonde hair. Hair is remarkable. It's a time capsule. As hair grows, it incorporates elements from a person's diet and environment, specifically the water they consume. The technique used was stable isotope ratio mass spectrometry, or SIRMS. This highly specialized analysis works by measuring the ratios of different naturally occurring isotopes, like carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen in the hair sample. For example, the ratio of oxygen isotopes in a person's hair is directly linked to the oxygen isotopes present in the drinking water of the place they lived. Since different geographical locations have distinct isotopic signatures based on local geology and rainfall, this test can create a map of a person's recent movements. The results from Nikole Bakoles' hair were astonishing. The SIRMS analysis indicated that the young woman had not been stationary in Utah for a long time. The composition of her hair showed that she had traveled extensively between Utah and the Pacific Northwest, specifically Washington State, in the months leading up to her death. This was the pivotal piece of information. The results provided a geographical profile that pointed directly toward her home state and, more importantly, her family. Investigators now knew where to look for a corresponding missing person case. They cross-referenced missing persons databases in Washington and Utah for young females with connections to both regions, particularly those who had disappeared around early 2000. This is when the file for Nikole Kistina Bakoles finally appeared. Niki's family had filed the missing person report back in 2003, and the details, the age, the timeline, the connection to Washington were an exact match for the forensic profile. On August 7, 2012, after 12 agonizing years, the identification was confirmed using a DNA sample provided by Niki's family. The remains of Saltair Sally had finally regained their name, Nikole Kistina Bakoles. She was 19 when she died. The relief for the family was surely immense. The torment of the unknown finally ended. But the relief was immediately replaced by a fresh, agonizing pain, the confirmation that she had been murdered. The case was officially reclassified from an unidentified person's case to the unsolved homicide of Nikole Bakoles. The search for the victim was over. The hunt for the killer had just begun. With Niki's identity confirmed, investigators could finally pivot the focus of their investigation from "who is she" to "who killed her." The investigation immediately circled back to the timeline established in 2000. The last person known to have seen Niki alive was her boyfriend, Joel Shodon, following their argument in March 2000. At the time of Niki's identification in 2012, Joel Chodone was incarcerated in a Washington state prison serving time for unrelated property crimes. This gave investigators a clear, controlled environment to question him thoroughly about the last hours of Niki's life. Chodone maintained the story he had initially given years prior. They argued, he left, and when he returned, Niki was gone, presumably having moved on as she often did. Investigators found no direct evidence that contradicted his statement or implicated him in Niki's murder. As of the most public reports, he was questioned, but he has not been officially named a suspect or a person of interest in the homicide. However, the nature of Niki's death, a body left discreetly in a desolate location, strongly suggested that the killer was someone she knew, someone close enough to her to act without raising immediate alarm, and someone who knew her environment well enough to access a remote dumping site like the area near the Saltair. The case received a significant amount of publicity following the identification in 2012, and this outreach often results in tips. One such tip provided a brief but chilling moment of potential breakthrough. Private investigator Jason Jensen of the Utah Cold Case Coalition reported receiving a terrifying anonymous phone call. The caller, whose identity could not be traced, claimed responsibility for Nikole's murder. Because the call was untraceable and could not be verified, it remains a heartbreaking fragment in the case, a moment where the killer seemed to taunt investigators from the shadows before vanishing again. Despite the identification, the forensic mapping of her movements, and the police interviews, the case of Nikole Bakoles remains, officially, an unsolved homicide. The public appeal continues, now directed at finding the person responsible for her death. Authorities have repeatedly asked anyone who knew Niki or Joel Chodone during the critical period between January and June 2000 to come forward. Any detail, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, a change in behavior, a car, an unusual location visited, could be the missing piece of the puzzle that links a killer to the victim. Nikole deserved a life filled with painting, poetry, and a reunion with her daughter. She deserved justice. The only way she will find peace, and the only way her story will truly conclude, is when her killer is finally brought to account. The case of Nikole Kistina Bakoles is a classic example of a cold case solved by science, yet the ultimate mystery, who did this, remains stubbornly unsolved. But Niki's story did not end when she was identified. The years she spent as an unknown victim, lying near the Saltair, cemented her place in Utah's eerie local lore. The nickname Saltair Sally evolved from a forensic placeholder into a genuine ghost story. The Great Salt Lake, with its strange high salinity and isolated atmosphere, is a natural cradle for spectral tales. Some individuals have reported seeing the ghost of Nikole, or Saltair Sally, near the desolate southern shores of the lake. Her story, the tragedy of the young, creative spirit lost to violence near a legendary cursed venue, made her an immediate candidate for local haunting folklore. This cultural impact was amplified in July 2021 when the popular paranormal television series Ghost Adventures dedicated an entire episode to the location. The episode was titled The Great Saltair Curse, and it focused extensively on the claims that the venue and the surrounding land were haunted by Niki's spirit, as well as other alleged ghosts. It's a sad irony that in death, Nikole Kistina Bakoles found a kind of immortality, not as the talented young woman she was, but as the haunted ghost of a forgotten victim. The legend, however, keeps the memory of the location alive and perhaps, crucially, keeps her name in the public consciousness. Nikole deserved a life filled with painting, poetry, and a reunion with her daughter. She deserved justice. The only way she will find peace, and the only way her story will truly conclude, is when her killer is finally brought to account. If you have any information, no matter how small, regarding Nikole Bakoles, her activities between January and June 2000, or her relationship with anyone during that time, please contact the Salt Lake City Police Department. Every cold case needs a voice, and Nikole's story demands to be finished. Thank you for tuning in to the Case Files. If you found this case compelling, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments which case we should cover next. Until next time, stay safe and keep asking questions. Hey there! Before you take off, we'd just like to take a second and say that we really appreciate you sticking around to the end of the video. Katie and I are so grateful for the incredible Case Files community, so thank you for being a part of it. If you want to help the Case Files continue to grow, one of the easiest things you can do is leave a like on this video and consider subscribing. Be sure to hit that notification bell as well and select all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. We want you to know that we truly appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much, and we hope to see you soon.